By all accounts, Madison had a promising future ahead of her. Fresh out of college, she landed her dream job teaching 5th grade at Rivercrest Elementary. Colleagues described her as energetic and passionate about education. Parents praised her dedication to her students. She was engaged to be married to her longtime boyfriend that summer and seemed excited about it. So how did it all go so wrong? It all started with an innocuous invitation. Madison was well liked by her students' parents, so much so that in December 2023, she was invited by one family to join them at Afton Alps for a skiing and snowboarding trip. It was there that she and her victim exchanged numbers. Initially, it was just so they could keep track of where the other one was on the ski hill, with the first text being sent on December 26th. It's not clear when the exact moment was that things became inappropriate, but it wasn't long before the spiral happened. Madison began texting with her 11-year-old victim every day, several times a day. In total, the pair had exchanged 35,000 texts throughout their entire correspondence. 90 text messages every day. And what's worse is that their exchange took place over a few months and not even an entire year. How did they even have time? We can only assume that the correspondence was taking place during school hours as well as after. When the texting began, Madison told her victim multiple times that it was inappropriate for them to be texting and that they should stop. But she followed this up by saying there were no cameras in the classroom. This showed she knew that what she was doing was wrong, and she was trying to guilt the victim into not saying anything, and perhaps even testing the waters to see if he would take the bait and accept an arrangement inside the classroom. Additionally, by being the one to say they should stop, it kind of left the responsibility on the victim to keep things going and is a way to avoid blame. Soon, the pair began having exchanges at school. Madison would keep the victim behind after class so they could make out. She would also have him sit near her during independent reading time so she could stroke his thigh and calf. In one text exchange, the victim describes how he wants to make out with Madison, and she says that she does too. It's a shocking exchange because when you read it without knowing the context, it could easily just be two kids talking about how they want to kiss. Then you remember, Madison responded to the victim's confession of his first kiss, saying that he was a better kisser than her fiance. Madison also sent the victim photos, although it's unclear if these were graphic nudes. One photo did include Madison in shorts and a t-shirt that was clearly taken in the elementary school bathroom. Reports haven't yet been released as to whether the discussion over text got per se, and police still have to go through about 11,000 pages of messages. But one conversation did grab their attention. The victim asked Madison about organs. She described them to him and also told him that she had pleasured herself to his photos. But the exchange didn't stop at texts. The pair also began writing each other handwritten love letters. 43 were sent from Madison to the victim, and 53 notes were sent from the victim to Madison. In those letters, they would call each other pet names like Pookie or Hottie, and in one, Madison confirmed their kiss, writing that she couldn't believe they'd kissed. She told him that he was the second person she'd ever kissed and that she was sorry he wouldn't be able to tell anyone about his first kiss. It isn't clear if this was true or not, but it stands to reason that as a 24-year-old girl who had had a regular college experience, it's more likely Madison had kissed more than one person in her lifetime. Again, this can't be verified, but if Madison was lying about her kiss count, then that means she utilized a predatory behavioral tactic. Relate to the victim, make it seem more innocent than it is, and lull them into a false sense of security and shared special experience. From what we know, Madison would generally keep it to the level of an 11-year-old's focus when it came to the areas she was aroused by, at least initially, refraining from getting graphic about intimate parts. She described the victim's chest area as a point of arousal, telling him she was distracted by his stomach and chest, texting, "I almost kissed you when you were on the ground today, but I got distracted by your stomach." In another note, Madison wrote, "One of my cousins is in 5th grade and I can't imagine a man talking to her how we talk. I know we have a special relationship and I do love you more than anyone in the world, but I have to be the adult here and stop." The language Madison used was definitely more infantilized than how we'd expect someone to speak to another adult. But this was a tactic employed by her to once again relate to the victim and make it seem like they were on the same level. It's a way to normalize things. Predators usually do this. It's a classical grooming technique. Befriend the victim, even though the predator is in a position of authority. Grant them special privileges and attention, making them feel different from the rest of their peers. Then begin initiating secret exchanges, which start innocently, but the predator then takes them to the next level once the victim feels a bit more at ease. In cases like this, the predator will also put the responsibility as it were on the victim. In Madison's case, she kept telling the victim it was wrong, but left avenues open as to how they could continue. That way, the victim feels like they need to comply in order to maintain the relationship, making it outwardly seem like they pursued the predator. Madison, as you'll find out, blaming the victim. But first, let's start with the incident that made the House of Cards collapse. At the end of April last year, the 11-year-old victim was speaking on the phone with Madison while he and his parents were at their home. It was after hours and a strange time for his teacher to be calling. It was the victim's mother who overheard the pair speaking, and realizing how inappropriate it was to be calling, she took the boy's phone away. She also emailed Madison telling her she had crossed a boundary and to please not phone after school hours ever again. The next day, on May 1st, fearing that there was more to the story than what was being shared, the victim's father went through his phone and found over 35,000 text messages between the two. Naturally, he was enraged. He printed out screenshots of the exchanges and marched down to the school. He was by no means quiet about it either. He barged into the principal's office demanding something be done. Madison had seen him entering the school, and so she must have had some idea that there was a problem and that it had to do with her. The principal of the school, Kimberly Osterheis, called the school resource officer, Tracy Hall of the Hudson Police Department, to decide how to proceed. When Hall arrived at Rivercrest, she was given the screenshots that the boy's parents had printed out. They were stomach churning. Madison was called into a private room to be questioned by Hall. Hall asked her if she knew why she was being interviewed. Madison responded that she had seen the victim's father at the school and assumed it was because of their communication. She then explained that she had had phone contact with the victim and that during winter break, the family had invited her to go snowboarding at the Afton Alps. At Afton, Madison explained she and the victim exchanged numbers in case they were separated. Madison then claimed that since that trip, the victim had called her 4 or 5 times for no reason. When Hall asked Madison if she had called the victim too, Madison told her that she couldn't recall. Then came the million-dollar question: had any text messages been exchanged? Madison immediately clammed up and requested a lawyer. And with that, the interview was officially over. As soon as Tracy Hall mentioned the calls, Madison tried to blame the victim, but she couldn't deny the facts. Over 35,000 messages were exchanged. The volume of this clearly indicated an unhealthy obsession that no doubt would have progressed into something terrible and life-altering for the victim. It was then Hall's job to interview the victim. Now, this had to be done really carefully. When officials interview children, there can be no suggestion or coercion in the line of questioning. They have to question the child at their level, make them feel comfortable, and ensure that every answer is freely given and in no way persuaded. These officials are trained in how to do this and likely record every interview. That way, the interview can be used as reliable pieces of evidence. When Hall interviewed the victim, he freely admitted to the communication between himself and Madison, and that during independent reading time, Madison would secretly caress him and would also make him stay behind after class, where she would kiss him on the mouth. He said they'd kissed several times in the last few months and exchanged love letters and drawings that Madison kept in a folder. Tracy Hall and school officials found this folder immediately after the interview. Madison had written the victim's name on the cover and stored it in a backpack she kept in the classroom. Almost immediately after the interviews and the discovery of the folder, Madison resigned. But strangely enough, she wasn't the only teacher to be dismissed that day. Another 5th grade teacher also resigned, and it's speculated that she knew about the relationship between Madison and the victim, but didn't report it, going against the mandatory reporting laws that someone in her profession is bound by. Currently, there are no charges against her, and her identity hasn't been released. But it's a horrifying example that in the case of child predators, they sometimes don't work alone. Sometimes people do witness the patterns of grooming and say nothing. And so, Madison was taken into custody and had her preliminary hearing at St. Croix County Circuit Court. In the courtroom, Madison's text messages were read aloud. All she could do was hang her head in shame. Her defense attorney was Joseph Tamburino, who argued that the text messages did not explicitly state a desire for acts and that it lacked direct language. The defense also argued that no or intimate part of the body had been touched. Yes, Madison had touched the chest, thighs, and calves, but according to the defense, those did not constitute intimate parts. But of course, Judge Scott Nordstrand saw through this feeble attempt at minimizing the charge and stated conclusively that the text messages proved probable cause for an arraignment. You see, the defense wanted the most serious charge to be dismissed, that of first-degree sexual assault. It was kind of like a Hail Mary. There was no way Madison was getting off. But if they could reduce the charges, that would be a win. If not, Madison would be facing 60 years for that count alone. After Madison received her first charge of sexual assault, the authorities began investigating further. She was hit with an additional 9 charges, bringing the total to 10. These included first-degree child sexual assault, sexual contact or sexual intercourse with a person under the age of 13, use of a computer to facilitate a child sex crime, child enticement, sexual contact causing mental and bodily harm, 5 charges of sexual misconduct by school staff or volunteer, and finally, exposing a child to harmful descriptions. After Madison was arrested, she was released on a $25,000 signature bond and went to live in seclusion on her grandparents' farm. Unsurprisingly, almost as soon as the allegations came out, Madison's fiancé, Sam Hickman, called off the relationship. According to a source, he was most upset that Madison cheated on him with a kid. One of Madison's bond conditions was that she stayed away from any locations that had kids present. But in July last year, a motion was filed by her team to clarify if she'd be allowed to go to restaurants and stores where kids would be present. It was a strange request considering the charges she's currently facing. Why would she willingly go to a place where kids were present after being accused of sexually assaulting a child? Madison also filed a motion to dismiss the criminal case. Her former colleagues at Rivercrest were dismayed to hear this, wanting her to accept responsibility for breaking the trust of staff, students, and parents, and putting the school in a precarious situation. Now, every interaction from every single teacher at the school had to be questioned. People demanded answers. Were there any other kids that Madison had previously attempted to groom? Was there more than one teacher involved? The school released a statement asking for privacy and assuring parents that they'd be offering counseling. But for many, this was too little too late. Sure, there were no outward signs that Madison was a predator, and this is a common thing with female predators. When we think of groomers, we have a picture in our minds of a creepy middle-aged man, but this time it was a young, attractive, and seemingly high-achieving young woman. Something both equally interesting and disturbing is that in the recent spate of cases like Madison's where female educators have sexually assaulted or groomed underage students, many of them have what appeared to be great, wholesome lives, either married, engaged, or part of a solid family unit with kids. So what's driving this? We know that the motives of male and female predators can differ, but what remains the same is the idea of power and control. In Madison's case, was it a power trip, a disgusting attraction to a child, or a way of recreating something from her past? Should schools be doing more to check into backgrounds of their teachers? But what about cases like Madison, where there doesn't seem to be any history of criminal behavior? She obviously presented as being incredibly trustworthy, otherwise the victim's family would have never invited her along to go snowboarding. With the increase in female predators at schools, we have to wonder what is leading to the upsurge. Is it reality feeding off a fantasy? The availability of fetish porn like teacher-student scenarios being readily available and the content we're exposed to online? Or is it the fact that with social media, boundaries can be crossed with the click of a button? Teachers can find students, students can find teachers. This opens the door for predatory behavior to occur. It's worth considering another angle. Are we too quick to dismiss red flags in women because society tends to view them as nurturers or caregivers? The idea of a female predator doesn't compute for many people, and that's exactly why individuals like Madison can fly under the radar. They exploit trust and shatter boundaries in ways that shock communities to their core. Madison's seemingly normal life makes it all the more baffling, but perhaps that's the point. Predators, regardless of gender, are rarely the people we expect. It's this mismatch between appearance and behavior that makes them so dangerous. Then there's the question of mental health. Are women like Madison dealing with untreated trauma or mental illnesses that push them toward horrific actions? While this doesn't excuse their behavior, it could help explain it. Researchers have found that some female offenders rationalize their actions by convincing themselves that their relationships with students are consensual or even romantic, which speaks to deep-seated delusions. And let's not forget about the societal pressures some women face to maintain an image of perfection. Could the facade of a picture-perfect life, one filled with accolades, professional success, and a stable family, create cracks that lead to destructive behavior? The case also shines light on how schools handle allegations of misconduct. Are the policies and training programs in place robust enough to prevent situations like this? Or are we relying too much on trust without enough oversight? With the rise of technology and the blurring of boundaries it creates, institutions may need to rethink their approach to safeguarding students. So, with all these questions in mind, what now? Well, Madison has pleaded not guilty to all the charges against her, meaning her case will go to trial. The next question is, how will this possibly be defended? The evidence of misconduct is all there, and the judge ruled there's probable cause for the sexual assault charge. It's likely that Madison will be facing significant jail time, regardless of what charges they find her guilty of. Whether the sentence will be up to 60 years or less remains to be seen. As the legal process unfolds, the community of Hudson, Wisconsin is left to pick up the pieces. Parents struggle with how to talk to their children about betrayal and abuse. Students grapple with conflicting emotions about a teacher they once admired, and everyone is left to wonder who they could really trust. Many in the community are also left wondering what other dark secrets may still come to light at the trial. Were there warning signs that were missed or ignored? Could this tragedy have been prevented if someone had spoken up sooner? It's becoming more and and more clear that sexual predators don't always fit our preconceived notions. They can be young, attractive, and outwardly successful. They can hold positions of trust and authority, and they can manipulate those around them with frightening skill to keep their crimes hidden. At the heart of it all is a bigger question that leaves us unsettled. How do we protect our children in a world where predators look like the people we're supposed to trust the most? And maybe the most haunting thought of all, are we asking the right questions to weed them out? Or are there dangers lurking that we're still too blind to see?